Train arrived at 1 territory.
Hey guys, how's it going? It's February 6, 2018, 9:51, and I don't know if you just heard that, but that is me thingamajig going around here. Just take out the handler for a minute because I'm not going to be using that for a few minutes. So, what's new? I'm into TD3 here, and I realized that I had another mode. The one that I'm used to, I guess, would be the handler. Now the handler acts more, it's always been the one that I thought of if I was to ever do some kind of external dispatcher, but never got around to it. I don't know where that guy's supposed to go. He's supposed to go down here, so we'll just flick him. We'll just send him over here for now. But this is just warming up a territory, so that's not going to do much of anything, really. But what happens is there's, and this is going back to the TD3, and I got the AC dispatcher up here for Waycross. What I wanted to show you is that there might be a different way to do this that might allow me to use an actual TD3 territory along with the simulation to represent all the train movements that would then have me try to dispatch it in AI. I'm thinking like, what the, you're probably thinking like, okay, well what the hell is he talking about? That sounds a little complicated. What I just did, what you're seeing right now is a standard TD3 simulation. Actually the start of it. I'm not loading a saved file. I'm starting at day 0 on a Sunday, started at midnight. The territory is totally dead. Now, not all of them are like that. Some of them are actually do have occupation taking place. But the reason why this makes it interesting is you can actually, it's called I/O, but what it does is it allows you to I'll try to explain the various modes. First of all, there's just your normal TD3 mode, which is if you're just basically CDC control, you got external I/O mode, and then you got your standard mode. Your standard mode is just basically running Train Dispatcher 3. I mean, this game's been out for, before my son was born, probably. Yeah, it's been, I think it's around early 2000s. So this has been around. And what the reason why this is actually starting to appeal to me a little bit more is because it allows me to avoid worrying about graphics right now and concentrating on the logic. But the reason why I/O mode suddenly got my attention was as of last night, you probably were seeing that I was into Run8, trying to mimic how the AI runs. Now, as far as how AI runs in Run8, I really don't have any rush to try to mimic that operation. It actually does quite a bit of simulation. It does a really good job. It always has. I've never had an issue with how the AI operates, as I said last night and have said other times. So you can see the occupancy just moved over, which means he moved over another block into Central Junction. Now I'm going to show you that it's about 9:55 p.m. I'm going to load up a couple files and show you what this exactly does. Now this isn't going to show up in the what do you call it? This isn't going to show up in your handler program, because the handler program only works with CTC, which CTC mode is to communicate with a model railroad. That's what it's designed for. It's basically allows you to use your TD3 to hook up to a model railroad and basically send commands to a handler software that then hooks up to electronically and you know, powers the signals and everything, whereas the indications come back and then turns into inputs to the computer. External input-output is a different thing, where a simulation is running, except you're using an external machine, or the potential to use an external machine to not only send commands to the TD3 software, but it also allows you to have the TD3 software send indications to hardware. So the examples there: one, you use CTC mode if you want TD3 to basically act as the dispatcher terminal for a model railroad. The other way is to take I/O mode, and that is where suddenly now you're dealing with maybe an old CTC board that's got salvaged from some historical society, for example. I actually believe this is used in some of the simulations where you could, there's places, I forget where in Pennsylvania, where you can actually run a CTC machine. And I don't know if it runs on this or not, but what this does is it allows a physical board to the computer, or TD3 would actually send the commands out to the hardware. So you would see the indications, the lights, the bells, the relays, which make sounds. All kinds of things can be done with TD3. It's just an added thing. Now I'm looking at both those modes as a potential, because really you're dealing with a form of a model railroad, but in reality you're still dealing with just another program. You're not really dealing with hardware, and you're really not dealing with a model railroad. You're dealing with another piece of software that's going to communicate with another piece of software, and that's the best mode there. Depends upon what you want. If you're trying to just do an AI dispatcher for, say, Run8, you're better off to do CTC mode, because then you don't have any interference with the simulation. In other words, you're not simulating train runs or anything like that. However, if you're trying to mimic how an AI would work, and you don't have a territory and trains to run or a simulation, and you're trying to mimic the operations, you may want to go with I/O mode. I'm starting to lean towards I/O mode only because what that does for me is, for the time being, it allows me to not worry about programming, spending time programming the trains and the routings they have to use. Not only that, but I also have the ability, if all goes well in it and the software can handle it, I have the ability to actually speed things up, because it will always be looking, the program, the RTS dispatcher, will be in the background always looking for new indications, and it will always be looking for new commands. Or I shouldn't say that, I should say the TD3 will always be looking for new commands. So as long as indications and commands, which are the two files here, I'll show you what I mean. So you can see that 10 o'clock was the last time that there was a file update, and now when we go over to here, so we got 10 o'clock still. if I look into the EI log, and I'll just open it up like that. Now I came on at around was it 9:53, 9:55? Let me just take a look and see what we have. Okay, so what happened was this signal went to stop, and I'm looking at the block number, just wanted to make sure Q. So that's block 26. He's now into block 26. So if I was to look down here and to see the progression of what's going on, looking for block 20, block 26 was cleared right there. Do I see a block 26? I don't see a block 26. That's cleared right. I don't see it. Okay, that's what I sent out. I reversed to one switch, cleared the right. So this is basically telling you it became unoccupied. I'm a little confused on that one. So where does block 26 come into play? Block 26, block 40. I just want to make sure that I'm looking at this right. So last timestamp was 10 o'clock. It's now at 10:02. So the switch became unoccupied. So now it's basically telling you everything that unoccupies. So it's telling you from the TD3 end that this is no longer unoccupied, but it isn't telling you anything else. That's the EI log. Okay, there's your occupied right. There it is right there. Okay, so back in 10:01. Oh, I see. What happens is it's doing one every. It moved at 10:02:57. So the last time we were there, I missed it. So it occupied right. There's the train number Q393. So it tells you the train, how many. I believe it tells you how many blocks are occupied, blah blah blah. If I go into the indications file, there's Q693 right there. 26 became unoccupied at day 0:22:20. 22:30 occupied right on block 52. Signal 18 went to stop, and the switch became occupied right. Switch number 6 became occupied right, which is this one. See, SW-006. So what it's doing is it's telling the data file everything that's happening as far as indications, as well as what else is happening in regards to both what the field is saying and what the computer program is saying. So what I don't have to worry about is moving the trains. The trains will move themselves. But what I can do is have it so that I can enact the computer to send in commands. I was looking at the manual to do this, and there's a lot to learn in here, but the cool thing about this is I should be able to hopefully start some AI. Like, I'll start off on some of the basics and see if I can create paths. Like, for example, this train here, there's only one way it could go. It's basically going to go here, and that's the only path it can go. Other places I may have to create every potential alternate path. And how I do that, or how it decides what alternate paths it's going to take, will all determine upon what else is out here, where the safe hold points are, etc. So there's a lot to go, you know, a lot to consider and all that. Now, of course, I got nothing else going on for the next little bit while that train heads off the territory. But that just saves me from having to create the trains and moving them around. That way I can concentrate on the AI logic. Now, I'm gonna probably look into getting some other territories, some of my old favorite territories. What had happened was I believe I got this computer not too long before I first got Run8, somewhere around that neighborhood. It's Windows 7, so I've had it for about, yeah, I've had it for 6 years. I got this shortly before I decided that I was going to get into Run8 and that I wanted to host a Run8 server as part of the beta team at the time. My eventual, actually, I'm just trying to, wait, hold on a second now. Is that, no, that's not how it originally played out. That part did, yes. The 24/7 server was my son's computer, which I bought later on when I decided that I was going to host my own independent server 24/7. So, but that's, so he's got a Windows 8 computer. But anyways, reason why I mention all this is because I forgot about this mode. This mode should save me a little bit of time, and then I can just focus on the things. And also territories, you know, this is a rather somewhat complicated territory. Not really, but it is, because then you're dealing with double track situations, although some of this isn't too bad. It is Waycross after all. If I look at the number of trains and the train volume, it's really not too hard. This was what I was using for getting things as far as you know, figuring out, and then I don't have to worry about the speeds. Here's how the speeds. When you look at the block properties and then you go look at the speeds, so you got 4 types, and they have the various speeds, whether they need helpers, how long it takes to start up on average. There's, you know, just 10 miles an hour going into a yard, but so yeah, I can be going into all kinds of different things here if I want to, or if I was thinking about doing it. Do I have a note? Yeah, well, so I got, this one would be a lot more difficult to do because of so many alternate paths when you look at something along the lines of Needle Sub and parts of the Mojave Sub there through Barstow. So I've definitely gone through all of those. I could go through it just for the sake of it. The other thing is stack signals. I don't know what it is about CTC mode, but it doesn't allow me to do these stack signals. I tried it last night and it wouldn't allow me. I don't know why that is. I don't know. I was reading up in the manual about that, and I can't quite figure out why that is. So this isn't going to be very long tonight at all at this point. I just wanted to address those things. One thing I do want to mention, and I've had some conversations, especially in regards to trying to figure out various steps moving forward. One of the conversations I was having was pertaining to Run8 and the lack of interest or lack of whatever. The only reason why I mention Run8 in this is there's still a side of me that hopes Run8 is going to somehow bring something and surprise me. They've done it before. And this is why I kind of hold out a little bit of hope, except I believe things have changed a little bit, whether it be because of the personal issues that they've gone through. They certainly have some bold objectives, at least as from December, when they're talking about 6 new routes and 4 new territories or something like that. They've been talking about LA for some time. On the other side, you got TSCAD, which sounded as if it was ready to go for December, but they ran into issues, and I was just on Run8 Depot actually before I came on just to see what the updates were like. And there's really no update as far as where TSCAD is. So I have found out that in order for me to do anything that is going to get into the external dispatcher, I'm probably going to have to go into Net Framework, which means I'm going to have to go into other languages. Before I even venture into that, I still want to get my confidence back up again and start working on figuring out, number one, how feasible it is to do these various AI dispatching tasks. That's very important for me to be able to, because I have the experience of dispatching. I've done it for off and on. I have done it for it seems close to 20 years now. It's crazy. It's been 20 years, but it actually has been about 20 years off and on that I have, as a hobby, have dispatched. And I learned my own techniques. I've dispatched various model railroads. I've dispatched various simulations. So I mean, I certainly am not by any means 20 years of pro experience, because I've never had the opportunity to dispatch professionally, but I've learned my own techniques and my own way of doing things. I've had people who have certainly complimented me on my ability to dispatch. So I think I have a lot to offer, considering the fact that I also have the computer programming background, albeit dinosaur programming. The good thing is, what this allows me to do is not have to worry about going through and learning all the latest technology, because I can use dinosaur technology and simple logic to derive, and basically brain power, to derive the results that I need. I mean, something like what you see on the screen here, like I said, is a lot more complicated, especially when you're dealing with complex things like this. But you start simple. You start off simple, and then you work your way out to more complicated tasks. As long as I can get the simple working, although in reality I do want to get the double track working as best as I can, because here's the deal. And this is probably stems back to where I kind of think, or at least I kind of feel, the dilemma that Run8 was running into. And you never know with them because you don't know what exactly is coming out next. The only thing we do know is from what they've said, and it's a cookie crumb thing. It always has been with them. They'll let out whatever cookie crumbs they think they can, and I understand trying to keep secrets, especially when now the shoe's on the other foot and I'm trying to protect intellectual property. Ideas, as I said the other night, ideas and intellectual property. If you have an idea and you share an idea and somebody else takes that idea and decides to implement it, well, guess what? They're the ones with the intellectual property. You may have had the idea, but they're the ones that implemented it. So you got to be very careful with talking about ideas. Ideas can be, simply, hey, he got an idea. Oh, wow, well, I got a better idea and I can make it work. So suddenly that becomes the main thing. But like as far as where it is that exactly that's going to take place, there's the cookie crumbs. We're talking about version 3 by the end of the year. I don't know where that falls in line in regards to I thought Los Angeles was kind of coming out at the beginning of version 2, so LA is apparently close. They're talking about that being ready by March, so at least we know that that's coming. What that is going to detail, I'm actually kind of interested in LA, to be honest. I'm very curious about it. I have a much more curiosity of LA versus, say, where they're going Seligman Way, only because Seligman Way is kind of like the Needle Sub, except it's may have a few more scenic pockets and some switching districts, but otherwise it's out in a desert, whereas LA, suddenly you're in an urban area. So I'm kind of curious. I'll be paying very close attention come the spring, especially in the evenings when I'm back home and we're not out rafting or something like that. I'll certainly be looking it up because I'll be curious as to what they're doing. And honestly, if it's something that really catches my attention and I feel it's something that I can do on my own, and it has to be something I can do on my own comfortably. That's the thing that I've been banging my head against the wall for the longest time, is I get into something and then I feel like, okay, well, here I am in Sanford Sub, which I thought was a safe bet, and then I realize, holy crap, I can barely line a signal on a track before grade crossings. It just got crazy, and that's when I realized, this whole running a train and dispatching thing is ridiculous. And I've heard people complain about it before, and I used to kind of think like, oh, come on, it isn't that bad. No, it is. But then again, I was always fortunate enough to be part of a group at the time where we had dispatchers, or we had enough people to support us, where we had, other crews, yard masters, all kinds of things. Well, when you start losing those people and when it's all up to you, and just like I was in conversation with somebody today, when it's all of a sudden it's all up to you, suddenly that changes. Because now everything is on you, and it's just like, well, wait a minute, if it's all on me, why do I really need to push for this? And how much fun is it to do it all on your own anyways, if you can't, if it doesn't feel like a real railroad, if you know what I mean. I don't know if I can explain that any more detailed. Like back in version 1, it was totally different. version 1, we didn't have AI. We didn't know what AI was going to be. So for version 1, we just had everybody, the only way a server, or the only thing anything really worked, unless you wanted to play single player and do absolutely nothing, the only way that things really worked is when you were part of servers that had enough people, or a core group of people, or a core system or something. And that's why RTS did have its strengths at one time. This is more than just, an RTS has never been the most popular server by any stretch of the imagination. But I've already been looking at what's happening. I see there's 2 sessions that have been advertised on Run8 servers, for example. One of them is in April and one of them is in June. That's very long term ahead. It's interesting, but the number of servers that are at least listed looks to be the same. But then when I look at stats such as Run8 Depot, I see that the stats, from at least my perspective, have gone down. So to me, the interest, considering the fact that this is the winter and this is usually the hot spot for things, to me, in my humble opinion, there's a decline. And it has been happening slowly through 2017. And I see this in a number of posts in some forums. I'm not really paying attention to Facebook. I see the speed at which certain updates, and I know I'm going on about Run8, but bear with me for a minute, I'll get to the point. If Run8 is able to, whatever this scheduling system is, hopefully before version 3, I think it's something that needs to show itself, because honestly it was teased before version 2. And I know things, and this is the, when you put a screenshot in, I remember when that thing came out, I was elated, and I've said this before, when I saw that scheduling system. Now, there's more than just the scheduling system that should be important too, I think. I think one of the things that I assumed would be part of it was going to be the ability to load a custom XML file. This is where RTS lost its power, primarily as far as the software, and where it wasn't so much that they took away the rest of the data files, although that did play a role, because Ski was able to get into a lot of the data files, and what that did was it allowed our spawns to be even better. Once we lost those data files, especially the track database files, once we lost those, we no longer had the ability to spawn properly wherever and whenever we wanted. So we lost that ability, and it went back to the old method of surveying a track, getting it, blah, blah, blah. So if, and this was always the idea, I always thought that AI, and I said this before, and I remember saying this just a little over a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, I said AI is going to enhance RTS. AI is going to make where we are in RTS, and it's only going to make us even better, because AI is built for us. And it really was, if two things happen, either one of two things had to have happened. Number one, the core group would have to evolve and continue to build so that there was more and more key members that could keep up with the new expansions. Or number two, the program would have to be inclusive of RTS. Now the cool thing about that is both of those things actually did happen at first, or at least it seemed that way. About a little over a year ago, we were at the peak. We had specializations in various yards. Schedules seemed to match. We were able to have at least 2 dispatchers on duty in California Southwest. We were running full train loads. Everything was working, and we were able to pretty much do what we wanted. As close to prototypical as California has ever run anywhere, as far as I'm concerned. I don't think anybody has ever reproduced what we were able to do. And I don't care what servers are out there right now, nothing can touch where we were a year ago. And I mean that. I don't mean that by human numbers. I mean that by actual operations. You take a look back at some of the YouTube videos from about a year ago on my channel, and you will see the capacity that we ran, the number of people we ran, everything. California was booming. It was totally fully operational. That was the peak of RTS. And honestly, when things started to have the little holes with people, nothing to do with, you know, personal things or whatever, or, you know, suddenly one person wasn't around, or this was happening and there was a hole here and a conflict here and stuff like that. Suddenly it started falling apart, and there was a lot more stress, and it felt, for me at least, by a year ago, it felt more like a job for me. Because I remember we were getting towards spring, and I was just like, man, this thing's feeling like a job to me. And that was almost the beginning of the end right there. And I knew it was going to come. And it's sad that happened, but it was fun while it lasted. And the Southwest server lives on. I don't participate in it, and it's nothing against the guys in the Southwest server. It's nothing against, you know, Mike and whoever's still there, because I really don't know, to be honest. But for me, there was that expansion, and the way, I think it was the fact that things were still expanding. It was more quantity over quality. And to me, the quantity over quality diminished the quality so much that it basically diluted the product. Despite the fact that there's a lot of people that love the expansion. They love the fact that they can run 800 miles or whatever the hell it is that they run now from one end to the other. You know, I don't know if it's 800 miles, but it seems that way. It's kind of crazy. And I mean, you know, all power to people who want to do that, but from an operation standpoint, you try managing something like that and have enough key people and to run full capacity in one of the busiest transcontinental corridors. Good luck. You're not going to be able to do it. You're going to need a lot more people and there's not a server out there that can do it. Nobody can. In fact, I would dare to say the combined most popular servers that are out there can't do it. They wouldn't have enough people even if they all got together. Maybe some of them would if they really all got together, but that's the thing. Everybody has their own individual ideas, and they have, you know, they have their own AI, and they have their they have their own requirements of what they want to do. So if going back to what Run8 to me needs, if for whatever reason this MoBeta upgrade of the train scheduling allows to have the RTS files, what'll happen, or what could potentially happen at that point, is at the very least I would be able to know what a schedule would be. Then possibly I might be able to move into another area, whether it be Florida, whether it be, and there's still some bugs with the humps, the way they're working, and there was a lot of things that were really getting to me, like having to trim the humps too many times and all kinds of things. It was just really becoming more of a job than fun. And that's where I just said, you know, I've got to go back to what I really envision a transportation system is supposed to be. So that's where I'm at right now, and it's kind of sad in a way, because the part of me doesn't want to let go of Run8. I've spent 6 years in it, but I know now I'm hanging on to Run8 by a thread. And as much as it was nice to fire it up last night, I don't miss it. I just don't. I remember the good old days. I remember how great it was. It's up to Run8. It really, Run8 has to sell me, and I mean, I think it has to sell to a lot of people, quite frankly. And I wish them the best of luck, but the more it's dormant, and the more it, you know, does whatever it does without really, there's a lot of talk about expansion. I hear a lot of talk about expansion. I hear a lot of talk about new developers, new content creators. I don't see any evidence of it. And again, they've surprised me, but I really don't. It's just like me. Talk is cheap. And I haven't made a cent off anything yet. So I can look in the mirror and say talk is cheap, because talk is cheap, until I start doing something, which I intend to be doing very, very, very soon, I might add. Because if you notice, my YouTube channel is suddenly active again, because I'm constantly trying to talk myself into ways and giving you an idea of where I'm headed with this. Right now it's all about AI dispatching. If I can get the AI dispatching to work, and I really feel I can, or at least I'm going to give it one hell of a try, even if it's 80% efficient than what a human can do, that's going to go a long way, and that's hopefully going to be safe. It's hopefully going to be not too disruptive, and then that's the type of technology that will push forward. Speaking of AI dispatching, I wanted to tell you one quick story before I let you go. And this was kind of cool. I was told about this a couple years ago, because we got into the topic about AI dispatching. Because AI dispatching is in the prototype. Ski was mentioning about this as well. And I don't know if it had to do with this territory or not, but I was told about this maybe about a year or two ago. The AI dispatching system, and this was from a rail fan who stood at trackside, and I don't know if it was a control point. Well, I imagine it's a control point because it was switches. I don't know if what I mean is, I don't know if it was like a double crossover or the start of a siding or what it was. But he stood by a control point, and the switch kept on. Every few minutes would turn reverse, then it would turn normal, then it would turn reverse, then it would turn normal. Apparently what was happening is the AI system was determining, I don't know if this was hearsay or he knew this for a fact, but the AI system was determining how to route the train, and it kept changing its mind. Now, there are safeties in place so that you cannot, you can cancel a signal, but you usually have to run 5 minutes on it. However, if the train is not within the double approach blocks, in other words, if he's within approach of a clear, that's not going to affect an intermediate signal. So he's coming into one clear and he's got a clear up ahead. So you start playing around with switches, you can do that. Even if you've already cleared it, you can go ahead and throw the switches as long as it's safe to do so in the control point. It isn't going to affect anything. Like I can stop this signal, do it here. I don't have to worry about running time. And running time is basically a safety procedure that if you cancel a signal after you've gotten permission from the crew to do so, because you have to make sure that the crew understands that you are canceling his signal, it'll drop to red, but it will not allow you to throw any switch for up to 5 minutes on average is usually the amount of time, and it would be flashing. So that's called running time. There's time, there's route blocking, there's a few different technical terms. I can't remember all of them. Route blocking, time blocking, running time, I forget. There's a few different terms. They're all similar because of the way the blocks are and the way the switches are set. Basically, you can't mess around with something that's clear. So what happens is it'll go red, and then before those switches will turn, the signals all go red. The train then has at least up to 5 minutes to stop, and so assuming it's going to stop, like say in a few minutes, what would happen then, just in case he misread and he thought that he still had a clear signal from the last one and he goes flying through, the switch hasn't changed. So getting back to this the switch kept on turning. I found that kind of interesting, but I found it feasible. Especially, let's just say, I'm just trying to think of a meet here that might work. These guys are too close, but let's say, okay. Yeah, something like this. He's probably at an intermediate, so it's already been declared, but let's assume for a second we weren't too sure about this one, so the light would stay dark, but this switch would be going, and then basically it would be deciding whether or not for him to take the siding or whether or not to take the main, etc., etc. As long as it's in the distance, an AI system could theoretically do that. The other way dispatching that what I do, the method that I use is a 1530 system is what I call it. So as a human takes, just because we're slower, we have our strengths and weaknesses. Speed and efficiency is not one of them compared to AI computers. Computers will beat us at that at any time. Humans are better at pattern recognition. So what happens is it takes me about 15 minutes to calculate all the various meets that I think are going to happen from one end to the other and what trains are coming on the territory. I try to give them 30 minutes so I have that overlap. Now, with the computer AI system, however, it could be doing it every minute, it could be doing it every 20 seconds, it could be updating, but let's just say, for the sake of argument, let's just do it every 5 minutes. Because every 5 minutes you're running time, correct? Potentially you'd have to run time for 5 minutes anyways, so why not set it for 5 minutes? So you set everything for 5 minutes. You go ahead and you run all your, you reassess all. And the reason why when I'm saying the switch would be kept turning in the field, is because what happens is it'll calculate based on the current speed and the track conditions up ahead as to how it would think. And the reason why the switch was turning and going from normal to reverse and normal to reverse is because the trains were so close that it was trying to constantly update what they thought was going to be the first train to arrive, and to put the appropriate train into the siding and the appropriate train on the main to try to keep it as efficient as possible. So I found that kind of interesting. I could see something like that possibly happening, but not necessarily. Humans can do the same thing, although most humans would not be lighting up routes until they knew absolutely for sure that that was going to be. A lot of times they will not cancel signals, because canceling signals often require running time, which could run you into delays. So you only signal up to what you need, basically. So I found that kind of interesting, though, when that was mentioned. So I can see doing it every 5 minutes or so, and then just going through and updating, the lengths or whatever. And it'll be interesting how the pathing. Single track main lines, by the way, single track main lines are a lot tougher for humans. They're a lot easier for computers because there's less variables involved. For example, a Jim Gray, there's only one place they can go, siding or the main line. Down here, they can go this main to that main to this main. They can also go this main, that main, this main, this main, siding, main, cross, siding here. There's so many things. They can overtake, decide whether or not to overtake a slower train here. Do they have enough time to do it? If not, can they do it before the westbound heads this way? Perhaps they can do it at Ash Hill. Maybe they can have a double meet here. One can go here, one can go there. There are so many variables. Now, yeah, you can take Seligman Sub West, and a lot of people do this because they don't have external dispatcher and just fleet everything, but that's just not the efficient way of doing it. These can run very efficient with the proper amount of detailed dispatching put into play. So, but again, all this said and done, it'll be interesting to see what happens this year with Run8, but it's not going to stop me from continuing to push on with the AI stuff. So we'll see. As far as any projects I'm doing with Run8 right now, there's none. I went in the other night. I just want to make sure you guys understand that wasn't a tease or anything, and no, that wasn't because I missed it. I was doing that just to see how things were, but that doesn't mean one day that I may not get back into Run8. I've always said that. I still loosely keep an eye on things, but it's going to take some very, very strong surprises. They've done it before, but it's going to take quite a few surprises just to keep me in the fold. And personally, I have a lot to prove myself. I think I have a lot of goals to accomplish in 2018. So, and so far I haven't been I've been very disappointed in what I've been able to achieve in the past 2 months. I have not been happy. Very dejected. And as far as what I've been able, some of the goals I had, trying to just get the momentum, trying to figure out what platform to use, trying to figure out how I want to do it, what I want to do exactly. The failures in Run8 had no big deal. I learned the hard way, but I gave it a try. So, like I said before, failure is not a big deal as long as you learn from it, which I have. So that is good. Anyways, that's it. I'm rambling. I rambled way too long as usual, but I knew I didn't have too much time tonight, so I figured I'd spend some of that and let you guys know the various modes. And so there's options. I think I'm going with the IO mode, and I will look into that and see what I can do possibly tomorrow, although I do have a lot of cleanup going because apparently they want to list the stupid house for sale again, which means I have to clean up around here as usual. So it's like a constant thing. But anyways, we'll see how that goes. But I'll try to get some in hopefully by Sunday because they're going to be looking at it Friday. So it looks like Sunday, if all goes well, I'll be hopefully coding, and at least I have some objectives moving forward. So anyways, that's all for now, guys. Have a good one, and we'll talk to you later.